It's noon Monday, April 21st here in Korea. Thanks for tuning in live from Seoul. I'm Ojin Ju.
Good to have you with us. I'm Mark Broom. Search and rescue teams are now into the 6th day of efforts to try and find survivors who may still be trapped on board the sunken Sewol-ho ferry. We await news of any survivors, but the chances are extremely bleak. 5 full days since the ferry went down.
The death toll continues to rise and is regretfully expected to go up even more. Let's go live to our Hwang and Myung-kil at the Paengmok-hang harbor. Sung-hee, what's the latest?
The divers are at this hour about to start their attempts at entering the 3rd floor of the vessel, which is the location of the vessel's cafeteria. The rescue team is expected to start this operation at about noon Korea time, which is just about now. The divers will also be focusing on the 4th floor of the vessel, which is where all the cabins for these high school students were, and which is also where all these high school students were believed to have been at the time of the sinking. 238 people are still missing in the sunken ferry, and nearly 90% of those are from the Tanwon High School in Ansan. The rescue teams have deployed well over 200 Coast Guard ships and Navy vessels, 13 fishing boats, 35 aircrafts, and more than 500 divers today. But despite the ongoing efforts for search and rescue operations, we have yet to hear any news of survivors.
That's right. Unfortunately, the death toll has risen to 64, with 5 more bodies found today. Some of the bodies have been identified. Rest of the bodies are still undergoing DNA tests, but most of them are identified as female students. The number of survivors remains unchanged at 174. The winds are blowing at a speed of 9 meters per second, which is better than yesterday, and the weather looks favorable with clear skies and calm tidal waves at 1 meter levels. Hopefully, the weather will work in favor of the rescue efforts. 5 full days have passed since the ferry capsized, but the families of the missing are clinging onto hope.
So really, it's a race against time for these rescue teams, and we really hope to be able to bring you guys some good news throughout the day. This is Hwang and Myung-kil reporting live from Paengmok-hang harbor.
In the days that immediately followed the Sewol-ho ferry accident, search and rescue efforts were seriously hindered by fast-moving tidal currents.
But thankfully, conditions are expected to improve this week, which should help divers navigate through treacherous waters near the sunken vessel. Park Ji-won reports.
Calm waves and clear skies. Wind speeds and wave heights were cut in half on Monday compared to the previous day as a high-pressure front moved into the area. Weather conditions have finally turned favorable for search and rescue crews in waters off Jindo Island, and the clear weather is forecast to continue through this Friday. Strong tidal currents, which significantly hampered the rescue operations last week, have also slowed.
Last week was the time when the current speeds were the fastest, and from the 19th it has been slowing down. Starting this Tuesday, the speeds will be at their slowest.
Last week, the maximum speed of the currents in the area were 2.8 meters per second, or over 10 kilometers per hour. That's expected to drop as low as about 1 meter per second, especially from this Tuesday to Thursday. When tidal currents slow, underwater visibility improves with less floating particles in the sea. That's why experts believe this week will be a turning point in search operations inside the sunken Sewol-ho ferry. Park Ji-won, Arirang News.
A recording of the ferry's radio distress call released on Sunday shows there was confusion and indecision by the crew.
The families of the victims and the missing are demanding to know why and how the crew was able to escape while the passengers were ordered to stay put in their cabins. Arirang News' Na Hyung-young has the details.
Even if you speak Korean, it's difficult to make out what the two sides are saying. But what's evident is that the situation sounds quite dire. The joint investigation team composed of the police and the prosecution released the transcript on Sunday. The Sewol-ho ferry and the Chindo Vessel Traffic Service, which is the Marine Traffic Control Center, made contacts 11 times and communicated for 31 minutes. The control center first contacted the sinking ferry at 9:06 a.m. Wednesday. At 9:12 a.m., the ferry was already severely tilted. The crew member who was talking to the control center already knew that the people on board were not able to move. The control center told the ferry that the captain needs to decide whether to order passengers to abandon the vessel. That was around 9:25 a.m., but the ferry said it was unable to make announcements because the speaker system was down. And the last time the two made contact was at 9:37 a.m. when the ferry told the control tower that only the people who were able to escape to the left side of the ferry were able to leave the vessel. Whether the captain was in the steering room when the communications were being made is still unknown. Captain Lee Jun-seok is arrested and formally charged for escaping the ship before the passengers. Further investigation will determine whether the captain in fact did neglect his duty by not promptly notifying the passengers about the situation during that 30-minute time frame. 나현경, Arirang News.
President Park Geun-hye has vowed to hold those responsible in the ferry sinking strictly responsible, pointing an accusing finger at the crew's irrational and irresponsible actions when the Sewol-ho got into trouble.
She also slammed the government's crisis management system, calling for the establishment of a strong control tower in countering and dealing with disasters such as this. For more, we're now joined by our Shin Se-min from the News Center. Se-min, fill us in.
Yes, President Park Geun-hye says anyone who played a part in the deadly ferry sinking last week should be held accountable according to both criminal and civil laws. At a meeting with her senior secretaries Monday, President Park then said the joint probe team of the prosecution and police should thoroughly and promptly clarify any suspicions that the public might have about the ship sinking. Referring to the captain and the crew, who are thought to have evacuated the sinking vessel before their passengers, the president said their acts were murderous and unimaginable on both legal and ethical grounds. President Park also criticized the government's insufficient emergency response at the beginning, saying the control tower should better oversee cooperation between the site of emergency and related ministries.
Some very, very strong words there from the president. Now, a clearer picture has started to emerge about the events around the time of the Sewol-ho ferry capsizing, with the release of the conversation between the vessel controllers and the ship. And prosecutors are also broadening their investigation into the crew and the ferry's operator.
Right, we're also getting word now of more arrest warrants being issued for some of the ferry's crew. What's the latest?
Yes, this just coming in several minutes ago that investigators looking into the disaster have issued arrest warrants for 4 additional crew members, one of them being an engineer. Now, this is in addition to the captain and 2 other crew who were arrested over the weekend. Officials also say some 20 people related to the renovation of the Sewol-ho ferry have been summoned for questioning. Prosecutors have previously said they would be looking into the mistakes made by the ferry's crew, the botched evacuation attempt, and the early rescue efforts and other related matters such as the extension of the cabin on the ferry. The Sung-hee shipping company will also be investigated, including some 20 crewmen and the captain Lee Jun-seok. The prosecutors also banned the family that owns the shipping company from leaving the country, as the investigation may be extended. And a special task force will be organized for an urgent investigation on the cause of the capsizing. Also on the cause, the Sewol-ho ferry was a 20-year-old ship imported from Japan. And according to the report submitted by the Sung-hee shipping company to the Financial Supervisory Service, the ferry had undergone months of renovations to extend its sailing life for more than 10 years.
Now, Se-min, the site of the accident, Chindo, and the city most touched by the tragedy, Ansan, have been declared as special disaster areas. This means they will now have access to special emergency funds, and the government will cover the vast majority of the costs.
That's right, Chinju. As you just said, the government has officially declared the two areas affected by the accident as special disaster zones. Ansan in Gyeonggi-do Province and Jindogun County in the southwestern province of Jeollanam-do are now considered two disaster areas. Ansan is where Tanwon High School is located, and students there have made up a majority of passengers on board the ill-fated ferry. And Chindo is where the Sewol-ho ferry capsized last Wednesday, and it's also where the Paengmok-hang harbor is located, the closest harbor to the accident site. These two areas will be able to receive the state funds that goes to search and rescue operations. And local taxes, including acquisition tax, will also be waived for those in the area. And although the reduction rates of the taxes vary, health insurance and the national pensions is to be reduced by 30 to 50%. Other general taxes will be either reduced or the deadline for payment will be postponed for up to 9 months. And unlike natural disasters, the damage from man-made incidents like the capsizing of the ferry may differ. So the support will be customized depending on the circumstances of the victims. And also financial services will be provided to the victims and the families, including those still waiting for news of their loved ones. Guys?
Thank you, Semin. Now, the families of the missing are now into a 6th day of waiting for any news of their loved ones who are on board the ill-fated ferry.
They have been huddled in an indoor auditorium near the accident site in Jindo, where our Hwang joins us live. Jie, how's it over there?
It's relatively calm here, but the atmosphere grows tense each and every time a body is pulled out from the vessel. While the families are trying very hard to stay calm, cries of grief were heard as they take a look at the television screen showing a list of descriptions of the newly discovered bodies. It's extremely heartbreaking, and with no new updates of survivors, hopes are dimming for many families here. Many of them have been here, living here basically since last Wednesday. They look very, very exhausted, many barely able to eat or sleep. Rumors are also spreading among the families here about how rescue operations are going, how the bodies are being handled, and more. It seems like there's very little trust in the authorities.
Jie, yesterday Prime Minister Jong Hong-won held closed-door talks with the families about the search and rescue operations. What, if anything, do we know about that?
No information about that as of now, but we do assume families are having closed-door discussions. Just a few hours ago, representatives of the families gathered in front of the podium for more private talks. All families want rescue operations to continue before authorities use huge cranes to refloat the sunken ferry just in case there are survivors, but hopes are fading fast. This was Hwang reporting live from Jindo Auditorium.
With many more clues emerging about what might have caused the Sewol-ho ferry to sink, the puzzle is slowly being put together.
Our Kim Min-ji reports on the 3 knock-on factors that experts suspect caused the ferry to capsize.
Around 8:30 a.m. on Wednesday, April 16th, the Sewol-ho ferry passed through treacherous waters which are notorious here in Korea for their strong currents. 18 minutes later, the ferry veers suddenly, which is being pointed to as the first factor in the sinking. The stern is believed to have turned 80 degrees to the right.
What it means by the vessel supposedly making a P-turn is that the helm was turned to the right, then back again. But the boat didn't come back to its original position. Operations momentarily froze, which results in the ferry making a complete turn.
Due to centrifugal force, the vessel tilts to the left. Now this is when the second factor may have come in. Grips holding down on the ferry's freight may have come loose, causing containers and vehicles in the cargo compartment to lift sharply to one side. The weight concentrated on just one side of the ferry causes it to tilt even further. If the vessel had enough dynamic stability, the vessel could have bounced back to the other side and maintained balance. However, due to renovations to increase the vessel's capacity, the center of gravity on the ship had been raised from its original design.
Due to the expansion of the ship, the upper structure has been changed, making the center of gravity much higher. If the center of gravity and buoyancy are far apart, the dynamic stability decreases.
Experts say the reduced dynamic stability caused the vessel to completely submerge because it wasn't able to recover from the initial tilt. They add that the Sewol-ho ferry may not have had enough ballast water, which maintains the balance of the vessel in order to carry more cargo. As all three factors could have been prevented, experts say the sinking will likely be attributed to human error. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
Now, going back to the victims of this disaster, once bodies are recovered, or better yet, if survivors are found, they will be brought to the Paengmok-hang Hospital, located in Korea's southern Jeollanam-do province, where hospital staff have been working tirelessly around the clock.
Arirang News' Kim Hyun-bin is standing by there. Hyun-bin, fill us in on the latest.
Hey guys, no bodies or survivors have arrived since I've been here early Monday morning. And this hospital is one of the 5 that are processing the bodies for identification, as well as collecting DNA samples. There are 24 bodies at these hospitals, 2 of which are located here in Mokpo. Medical helicopters is on standby, along with 2 medics, so that the hospital can efficiently transport rescue survivors or the deceased. Paengmok-hang Hospital officials say 50 beds have been reserved for any possible survivors that are found, and 20 doctors and nurses are on standby 24/7. Since rescue operations are entering the 6th day, hopes to find survivors are slowly dimming, and officials are expecting more bodies to be transferred here throughout the day. Back to you guys.
Hyun-bin, the survivors who were rescued on the first day of this accident, they are being treated there. I heard that many are experiencing severe depression and anxiety, and the hospital has forbid anyone from visiting them except for family members. How are they doing?
Well, not so good. Doctors are saying that all the survivors are suffering from post-traumatic stress, and roughly half of them are on medication, which is a clear indication of the severity of their conditions. And even family members are suffering from shocks. And one of the fathers of a missing student suffered a stroke. And some of the survivors are suffering from depression and even amnesia. This has been Kim Hyun-bin reporting live at Paengmok-hang Hospital, and we'll give you more updates throughout the day. Back to you guys.
Now, identified bodies are then transferred to local hospitals, and Korea University Ansan Hospital is one of them. But the families of the missing are clinging on to the last string of hope that their loved ones will be found alive, but most are also preparing for the worst.
Yeah, that's right. Our Kim Ji-yeon is standing by at that hospital. Ji-yeon, how's the atmosphere there?
Mark, Jinju, I'm standing at the funeral hall of the Korea University Hospital in the city of Ansan. This city is where most of the passengers, including more than 320 students, attended schools and lived. Bodies are sent from the southwestern part of the country to this location, where friends and family and the community are gathering together to grieve for the fallen. The bodies of an additional 21 students were transported here to Ansan overnight. These students were found trapped inside a cabin of the ferry. The body of the vice principal of the Tanwon High School, who is identified by his surname Kang, was released this early morning. Mr. Kang committed suicide due to the overwhelming guilt felt at being rescued and not being able to save those in the ferry. Some of the bodies of the students are being held here as well, but due to the parents' requests, their release has been postponed. But they will be released at a group memorial altar, which will be held on Wednesday at the Ansan Olympic Memorial Hall for students and teachers.
Right, the people directly affected by this are understandably devastated. Now, how are the residents of Ansan coping? Many are still in shock.
Well, as you can imagine, it's really hard. It's really difficult for the families in the community. Ansan is located at the outskirts of the capital city of Seoul. It's a very vibrant city with a population of more than 780,000, but it's a very thick, it's a very cohesive community. But there's a harsh silence in the city for several days now as the whole city mourns for the dead. More than 10 events that is normally due to arrange in this hour has been canceled or been postponed indefinitely. There's no warmth of spring in this part of the country. This is Kim Ji-yeon from the city of Ansan.
Now, as Ji-yeon just mentioned, even those who are not directly involved in the ferry incident could display symptoms of acute stress and anxiety.
That's happening to the people of Ansan, with the whole city caught in complete shock as the second-year students of Ansan's Danwon High School, most of them missing, were on board the Sewol-ho ferry. Sun Jung-in has more.
The entire city of Ansan is deep in sorrow. It has been a heart-wrenching time for everyone, even for those who are not directly affected by the disaster.
I see the same news every day. The media are all covering the story 24 hours a day now, and all of the mothers are crying watching it.
Many have complained of sleep disturbances at night and poor concentration during the day.
All of the residents here are depressed and saddened by the accident. We are also angry, thinking about why this happened in the first place.
The entire city is prone to post-traumatic stress disorder, which often occurs after a person has gone through an overwhelming life experience such as this. Back in 2001, after a terrorist attack in New York on 9/11, some 532,000 people were said to have been suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder, which made it hard for them to go through their lives while feeling a sense of normalcy for the next month or more. Even an indirect experience through TV or the internet can have a similar impact and produce stress. It's not only the survivors and the families of the missing who are at risk for PTSD, it's also witnesses and rescue operators. But it's the students and teachers from Danwon High School who are assumed to be suffering the most.
They can suffer from insomnia, nightmares, and flashbacks of past traumatic events. In extreme cases, they can have a hard time adapting to their social life, and in extreme cases, it can even lead to suicide.
Symptoms of PTSD can even show up years after an accident, so it is important to keep an eye on anyone with the condition. Experts recommend that people suffering from PTSD see a doctor if they have distressing dreams or a sensitive reaction to their surroundings. In addition, they advise parents and adults to talk with young children and teenagers about the news and limit their exposure. Sun Jung-in, Arirang News.
I'm Lee Ji-hyun with a check on the weather conditions this Monday in Jindo. The conditions looks to be improving. Winds should be calmer than yesterday, and waves will be milder with reaching no higher than 1 meter. And the currents have weakened compared to the last few days. At certain times of the day, the speed of flow should decrease. Well, next is coming shortly at 1:09 p.m. and another should be at 6:40 p.m. And the speed of tidal currents will begin to slow down to their slowest 1 hour before and 1 hour after these times. And things should get even better from tomorrow, as Ji-won reported earlier, as the neap tide occurs. Well, these are when the difference between high and low tide is at the least. So let's hope this boosts the search and rescue operation over at the sites. Now, clouds should move into the Jindo later in the afternoon, and temperatures should be a tad warmer than yesterday. Well, that's all for me today, but Arirang's Weather Center will bring you the latest weather updates throughout the day.
Thank you very much, Jion. Those are the latest updates we have for you at this hour. Stay tuned to Arirang as we will continue to bring you the latest on the search and rescue efforts.
Our next newscast will be at 2 p.m. Korea time with new developments on the ferry sinking. Thank you for watching.